An elderly billionaire sits alone on a freezing Christmas Eve in the park. Suddenly he hears a small voice behind him, and turns to see a sweet little girl asking, "Sir, why are you crying?" Her mother rushes over, and when she sees the pain etched on the old man's face, she does something completely unexpected. Despite their own struggles, she invites this stranger to join them for Christmas dinner. That simple act of kindness touches the billionaire's heart in a way nothing else has, and the choice he makes afterward will change their lives and his entire billion-dollar empire forever. Before we wrap up, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe because tomorrow I've got something special for you. The winter wind sliced through Walter Hammond's expensive wool coat as if it were made of tissue paper. He sat hunched on a weathered park bench in Philadelphia's Rittenhouse Square, his 72-year-old shoulders trembling, his weathered face buried in his liver-spotted hands. Fresh snow blanketed the ground around him, pristine and untouched, but he barely registered its presence. The world had drained of color 4 years ago when cancer stole his wife, Catherine, and now, on this bitter Christmas Eve, those colors stubbornly refused to return. Walter had everything money could buy: the sprawling estate in the mainline suburbs, the vintage car collection, the investment portfolio worth hundreds of millions, assets that made financial advisors salivate with envy, but none of it held meaning anymore. Not one single dollar could resurrect the sound of Catherine's voice saying his name. Not 1 cent could restore the Sunday mornings they'd shared, reading newspapers together in comfortable silence, her feet tucked under his legs on the couch. Walter didn't even understand why he'd come to this park. His driver had been taking him home from the Pierce Hammond Industries headquarters when something compelled him to ask to be let out here. Perhaps it was the families he'd glimpsed through the shop windows along Walnut Street, their arms laden with gift-wrapped packages and their faces radiant with anticipation. Perhaps it was the knowledge that he'd spend another Christmas eating catered food alone in his mansion, surrounded by furniture that cost more than most people earned in a decade, but provided absolutely zero comfort. His tears fell freely now, freezing against his weathered cheeks in the December cold. He'd stopped caring who witnessed his breakdown. The park was nearly deserted anyway. Most sensible people were home with their families, warm and content and together, everything he would never be again. The pills were in his pocket. He'd picked them up this morning from 3 different pharmacies, careful not to raise suspicion. Enough to ensure he wouldn't wake up. He'd written the note, left it on his desk at home. His sister Sarah would find it eventually. She'd be sad but not surprised. Everyone had been waiting for this, really, ever since Catherine died. His hand moved toward his pocket. "Mister, why are you crying?" The small voice pierced through his fog like a church bell on a quiet morning. Walter looked up, blinking away the moisture that blurred his vision, to find a little girl standing directly in front of him. She couldn't have been older than 7, bundled in a bright purple coat that showed wear at the cuffs but was spotlessly clean. Her dark brown skin seemed to glow against the white snow backdrop, and her eyes held more genuine concern than any adult had shown him in months. "Maya, baby, come back here right now." A woman's voice rang out, warm but worried, but the little girl didn't budge. She tilted her head, studying Walter with that serious, penetrating expression only children could manage. "Are you sad because you're all alone? It's Christmas Eve. Nobody should be lonely on Christmas Eve." Walter tried to formulate words but his throat had closed up entirely. He managed only a slight nod. His hand, still halfway to his pocket, fell back to his lap. The little girl's face brightened with sudden inspiration. "Don't cry, mister. You can share my mama. She's really nice, and she makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches, and she always says there's enough kindness to go around for everybody. You can come have dinner with us." Maya. The woman had reached them now, slightly breathless. She was striking, Walter noticed even through his fog of despair. Her African-American features were soft and open, her natural hair pulled back in a simple but elegant style. She wore a navy business suit under her heavy winter coat, somewhat rumpled as if she'd had a long day, and her eyes held the same warmth as her daughter's voice. "I'm so sorry, sir. She sometimes approaches strangers even though I've told her not to. Come on, sweetie." She reached for her daughter's hand, but Maya pulled away. "But mama, he's crying. He's all alone and sad, and it's Christmas Eve. We have to help him. You always say we help people who are hurting." The woman looked at Walter, then really looked at him, not at his expensive coat or his gold watch, but into his eyes. Her expression shifted, something like recognition flickering across her face. Not recognition of who he was, but recognition of what he was, someone drowning. "Are you all right, sir?" Her voice was gentle. "Do you need me to call someone for you? A family member or friend?" Walter finally found his voice. It emerged rough and fractured. "There's no one to call. I apologize. Your daughter is exceptionally kind. You've raised her beautifully." The woman bit her lip, clearly wrestling between maternal caution and human compassion. Her daughter tugged insistently on her coat sleeve. "Mama, please remember what Grandma Rose always said. When you have a chance to be kind, you take it every single time. This man needs kindness. I can tell." The woman looked down at her daughter, then back at Walter. He could observe the internal debate playing across her face. She should walk away. He was a stranger, possibly dangerous, definitely unstable. Every reasonable instinct probably told her to protect her daughter and leave. But she didn't. "My name is Sharon Bennett," the woman said finally, her voice gentle but steady. "This is my daughter Maya. We live just 3 blocks from here in a small apartment. We don't have much, but we do have a warm home and enough food for one more person. If you'd like to join us for Christmas Eve dinner, you're genuinely welcome." Walter stared at her in disbelief. When was the last time someone had invited him somewhere without wanting something in return? Without hoping to network with his business connections or gain access to his wealth? This woman didn't know him from Adam. She saw only a man in pain, and her instinctive response was to offer help. "I couldn't impose," he said automatically, even as everything inside him screamed to accept, even as his hand moved away from the pocket with the pills. "It's not an imposition if you're invited," Sharon replied. "And my daughter is absolutely right. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve, so I'm asking you as one human being to another, will you please come have dinner with us?" Maya bounced on her toes with excitement. "Please say yes, mister. Mama made her special baked chicken, and there's cornbread and green beans and everything. And after dinner, we watch Christmas movies and drink hot cocoa. It's the absolute best." Walter looked at this mother and daughter, these complete strangers offering him more genuine warmth than all his wealthy acquaintances had in 4 years. His chest felt constricted, but for the first time in forever it wasn't solely from grief. It was from something else, something that felt dangerously like hope, or maybe just surprise. Surprise that in his darkest moment, when he'd been seconds away from taking the pills that would end everything, a child had appeared and offered him her mother. "My name is Walter," he said quietly. "Walter Hammond. And yes, if you're absolutely certain, I would very much like to join you for dinner." Maya's face lit up like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "Yay, come on, Mr. Walter. Our apartment isn't fancy, but it's warm and cozy, and Mama says that's what really matters most." Sharon gave him a soft, understanding smile. "She's absolutely right about that. Come on then. Let's get out of this bitter cold." As Walter stood and fell into step beside them, Maya reached up and took his hand without the slightest hesitation. Her small warm fingers wrapped around his cold, age-spotted ones, and something deep inside his chest cracked open, not painfully, but like ice beginning its slow thaw after a long, brutal winter. He had absolutely no idea what he was doing. He had no rational explanation for why he was following these strangers to their home. But as Maya chattered happily about Christmas cookies and reindeer, and all the things 7-year-olds found vitally important, Walter felt the first genuine flicker of warmth he'd experienced in 4 long cold years. Maybe Catherine would have approved of this choice. She'd always believed that the best gifts came from the most unexpected places. She'd had faith in random acts of kindness and the connections that transcended loss. If she were here, she probably would have encouraged him to accept this invitation even faster. She probably would have scolded him for even considering the pills in his pocket. They turned the corner, leaving the park behind. The snow continued its gentle descent, covering their footprints, erasing the evidence of the broken man on the bench. Ahead of them, warm lights glowed from apartment windows like beacons. Behind one of those windows was Sharon and Maya's home. And for tonight, at least, it would become his refuge too. Walter didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if this kindness would change anything fundamental, or if he'd wake up on Christmas morning still drowning in the same grief, still reaching for those pills. But for now, in this moment, walking through the snow with a little girl's hand in his and her mother's compassion warming him from the inside, he possessed something he hadn't had in years. He had a reason to make it through the next few hours, and sometimes, that was enough. The Bennett apartment was exactly as Walter had imagined, small, modest, simple, and somehow more welcoming than any luxury hotel suite he'd ever occupied. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow color, decorated with Maya's crayon drawings and several family photographs. A small Christmas tree stood proudly in the corner by the window, its ornaments clearly handmade and collected over years rather than purchased all at once from an upscale department store. "Make yourself comfortable," Sharon said, hanging up her coat on a hook by the door. "The bathroom is down the hall if you need it. Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. Can I show Mr. Walter my room, Mama, please?" Maya asked eagerly. Sharon smiled at her daughter with obvious affection. "If Mr. Walter doesn't mind." "I don't mind one bit," Walter said truthfully. The distraction was welcome, anything to stop thinking about the pills still in his pocket, the note on his desk, the plan he'd almost executed. The little girl grabbed his hand again and pulled him down the narrow hallway. Her room was tiny, barely large enough for a twin bed, a small dresser, and a bookshelf crammed with worn paperbacks, but it was absolutely filled with personality and love. Stuffed animals lined the bed in careful arrangement. Books were stacked neatly on the shelf, drawings covered every available wall space. "This is Mr. Buttons," Maya said, holding up a threadbare teddy bear with one eye missing. "He's been with me since I was a baby, and this is Princess, and that's Spots, and that one over there is George Washington." "George Washington?" Walter asked, genuinely curious despite his emotional exhaustion. "He's got white fur and Mama says he looks very dignified, so I named him after the president." Walter listened carefully as she introduced him to each stuffed animal, providing him with their complete life histories and favorite activities. It was the most normal, unguarded conversation he'd had in years. No one asking for investment capital. No one pitching elaborate business propositions. No one treating him differently because of his wealth or status. Just a little girl sharing her treasures with someone she'd decided to trust completely. For those few minutes, Walter forgot about the pills, forgot about the plan, forgot about everything except this child's innocent joy in her simple possessions. "Your room is wonderful," Walter said when she'd finished her comprehensive tour. "You've made it very special. It's small, but Mama says good things come in small packages." "That's me, I'm small but mighty." Maya flexed her thin arms to display her muscles. Walter found himself smiling, actually smiling, for the first time in months. "Your Mama is very wise indeed." "Dinner's ready," Sharon called from the kitchen. The table was set simply with 3 mismatched plates and glasses. A mason jar in the center held a few fresh evergreen branches, filling the small space with the clean scent of winter. The food was arranged in serving bowls, steam still rising invitingly from the dishes. "I hope you like home cooking," Sharon said as they settled around the table. "It's nothing elaborate or fancy, it looks absolutely wonderful," Walter replied with complete honesty. His personal chef prepared complicated meals that he barely tasted anymore. This simple baked chicken dinner looked better than anything he'd eaten in months. Maya reached out and took both their hands expectantly. "We always say grace, Mr. Walter. You don't have to if you don't want to, but we do." Walter found his hands being squeezed by both of them. Sharon's hand was warm and strong, calloused from hard work he could only imagine. Maya's was soft and small and trusting. Both felt like anchors to reality, to life, to something beyond the darkness that had been consuming him. Sharon's grace was simple and heartfelt. "Thank you for this food we're about to receive, for this day we've been given, and for bringing someone new to share it with us. May we always have enough to share with others, and may we never forget to be grateful for what we have. Amen." "Amen," Maya echoed cheerfully. "Amen," Walter whispered, the word feeling rusty in his mouth. When was the last time he'd said grace? Catherine had been the religious one. After she died, he'd stopped bothering with any of it. The meal was genuinely delicious, not because the food was gourmet, but because it was prepared with care and shared with authentic love. Maya maintained a steady stream of chatter, telling Walter about her elementary school and her best friend Jasmine and the chapter book she was reading about a girl detective. Sharon interjected occasionally with gentle corrections or additions, her eyes soft as she watched her daughter with obvious devotion. Walter found himself relaxing incrementally. The tightness in his chest loosened slightly. The constant mental refrain of just end it, quieted to a whisper. So Walter, Sharon said during a rare pause in Maya's enthusiastic monologue, what do you do for work? He'd been dreading this inevitable question. The moment she knew who he really was, everything would change. People always treated him differently once they knew, but he'd promised himself no more deception. He was done with pretending. I run a company, Pierce Hammond Industries. We do commercial real estate development and construction. Sharon nodded slowly. Recognition dawned gradually in her eyes, but she didn't react the way most people did. No widening eyes, no sudden change in demeanor, no awkward fawning. Just a thoughtful, measured look. I've heard of it. You build those large office buildings downtown, among other projects. Yes, among other things. He paused. That must carry a lot of responsibility. Walter was genuinely surprised by her even-toned response. Most people either immediately asked invasive questions about his wealth or became noticeably intimidated and uncomfortable. Sharon did neither. She simply acknowledged his work professionally and moved forward. What about you? He asked, eager to shift focus. You're wearing a business suit. What's your profession? I work as an administrative assistant at Whitman Financial Services downtown. I've been there for nearly 9 years now. Mama helps important people stay organized, Maya added proudly. She's the best at her job in the whole company, but they don't always treat her nice. Maya, Sharon said gently, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. Well, it's true, Mama. You said so yourself last week. Sharon changed the subject smoothly, but Walter had caught the brief shadow that crossed her face. There was a story there, he suspected, one involving workplace struggles and possibly unfair treatment. He filed the information away, curious despite himself. After dinner, Walter insisted on helping with the dishes despite Sharon's polite protests. They stood side by side at the small sink, her washing and him carefully drying with a threadbare but clean towel. It was domestic and comfortable, and completely foreign to his usual existence. He couldn't remember the last time he'd dried a dish by hand. Catherine had always insisted on doing kitchen cleanup herself, said it relaxed her. After she died, he'd hired people for everything. Thank you for inviting me, he said quietly as they worked in companionable silence. You absolutely didn't have to do that. Maya was right, Sharon replied simply. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve, especially not someone who's clearly hurting inside. Walter's hand stilled on the dish he was drying. How did you know I was hurting? I could have been dangerous. She gave him a sideways look, one corner of her mouth lifting slightly. I've worked in offices for years, dealing with all kinds of people. I've learned to read faces pretty well, and I saw something specific in your eyes, grief, the kind that goes bone deep and doesn't let go easily. I lost Maya's father 5 years ago, car accident on the turnpike. I recognized that particular look immediately. Walter was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. My wife, 4 years ago, cancer. We'd been married for 43 years. I'm so sorry, Sharon said softly, genuine empathy coloring her voice. That's an incredibly hard road to walk, losing a spouse after so many years together. How did you manage to get through it? Walter asked, genuinely wanting to know, because he clearly hadn't managed. He'd been minutes away from swallowing enough pills to ensure he never had to manage again. How did you keep going? She handed him the last plate to dry, considering her answer carefully. I had Maya. She needed me desperately, so I had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I had my faith, my mother, my work. But mostly, I had to make a conscious choice every single day to keep living instead of just existing. Some days that choice was harder than others. Some days I failed completely, but I kept trying, and here I am. Here you are, Walter repeated thoughtfully, making dinner for complete strangers and raising a remarkable daughter, and somehow making it all look manageable. Sharon laughed, a warm, genuine sound. It's definitely not manageable, trust me. There are days I cry in the shower because I don't know how I'm going to pay all the bills. Days when I'm so exhausted I can barely function. But then Maya smiles at me or says something funny or gives me a hug, and I remember exactly why I keep going. She's truly special. She is, Sharon agreed, drying her hands on a towel. She gets her heart from her father. He was always bringing home strays. People, animals, didn't matter one bit. If something needed help, Marcus helped it without thinking twice. Maya inherited that generous gene, and I'm grateful she did. I'm grateful she did too, Walter said seriously. He touched the pocket with the pills, feeling their weight. I don't know what would have happened if she hadn't talked to me tonight. I was in a very dark place. Sharon met his eyes directly, and he saw real concern there, not pity, but genuine care. Are you going to be okay when you leave here? I mean, do you have someone you can call, someone who can check on you and make sure you're safe? The concern in her voice was authentic. This woman barely knew him, but she genuinely cared about his well-being. When was the last time someone had asked if he was okay and actually wanted to hear the honest answer? Walter thought about lying, thought about saying yes, of course he'd be fine. But something about Sharon's directness invited honesty. I was planning to take pills tonight, he said quietly. Enough to make sure I wouldn't wake up. I had them in my pocket when Maya found me. Sharon's hand flew to her mouth. Walter, I'm not going to now, he said quickly. Your daughter's invitation changed something. I don't know what exactly, but I think I can make it through tonight. And maybe that's enough for now. Sharon's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Do you have family, someone I can call to be with you? I have a sister, Sarah. We're not close anymore. I've pushed everyone away since Catherine died, but she'd come if I called. Will you call her, tonight? Walter hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I'll call her. Promise me. I promise. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what he just confessed hanging in the air between them. Movie time. Maya called enthusiastically from the living room, breaking the tension. Come on, Mr. Walter, we're watching Elf. It's my absolute favorite Christmas movie. They settled on the worn couch, Maya positioned between them. A large bowl of popcorn balanced on her lap. The movie played on a small television that had definitely seen better days, the picture slightly fuzzy around the edges, but Maya's pure joy in watching it was absolutely infectious. She laughed at all the funny parts, even though she'd clearly seen it dozens of times before, and could probably recite every line. About halfway through the film, she leaned against Walter's side naturally. Without thinking, he put his arm around her small shoulders protectively. She snuggled closer, completely trusting, completely comfortable, as if they'd known each other for years instead of hours. His throat tightened with unexpected emotion. This child, who owed him nothing, who barely knew him, had possibly saved his life tonight. And she didn't even know it. He glanced at Sharon and found her watching them with soft, understanding eyes. She gave him a small smile that seemed to communicate that she somehow understood what this simple moment meant to him, this small child's trust, this uncomplicated acceptance. By the time the movie ended, Maya was yawning widely, fighting to keep her eyes open. Bedtime, little one, Sharon said gently, standing up and stretching. But I want to stay up with Mr. Walter, Maya protested sleepily, rubbing her eyes. Mr. Walter will still be here in the morning, if he'd like to come back, Sharon said, then looked at Walter with a question in her eyes. Walter understood what she was really asking. Was he safe to go home alone? Would he keep his promise not to take the pills? I'd love to come back for Christmas morning, if the invitation's open, he said. But I should go home now. I need to call my sister, and I need to dispose of something. Sharon understood. Of course. What time should we expect you tomorrow? Is 8 too early? 8 is perfect. Maya will be awake by 6 anyway, bouncing off the walls waiting for Christmas. After Maya was tucked into bed, a process that involved multiple stories, several glasses of water, and repeated reminders that Santa couldn't come if she didn't sleep, Sharon walked Walter to the door. Thank you, she said quietly, for trusting me enough to tell me the truth tonight. Thank you for caring enough to ask, Walter replied, and thank you for inviting me. You and Maya, you saved my life tonight, literally. Sharon reached out and squeezed his hand.
Then I'm glad we were in that park. And Walter, if you start feeling dark thoughts again tonight, you call me. I don't care what time, promise me. I don't have your number. She grabbed a notepad from the small table by the door and scribbled her cell number. Now you do, promise me. I promise. He hesitated. Sharon, why did you really invite me? You didn't know me. I could have been anyone. She was quiet for a moment, considering. Do you believe in signs, in meant-to-be moments? I don't know. My wife did. Maya doesn't usually approach strangers. I've taught her better. But today, she walked right up to you like she knew you, like she was supposed to. And when I looked at your eyes, I saw my own eyes from 5 years ago. That kind of pain, I couldn't walk away from it. Maybe I was supposed to be in that park tonight. Maybe Maya was supposed to find you. I don't know, but I'm glad we did. Walter's vision blurred with tears. So am I. He walked back to his car, which was still parked near the square. The pills were still in his pocket, their weight a constant reminder. He pulled them out, looked at them for a long moment in the dim street light. Then he walked to a public trash can and threw them away. He sat in his car and called Sarah. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. Walter, what's wrong? It's almost 11. I need you to come over, he said. Tonight, I'm okay, but I need you here.
What happened? I'll tell you when you get here. But Sarah, I almost did something tonight. Something permanent, and I need to tell you about it. I need help. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I'm coming. 20 minutes. Don't go anywhere. I won't. I promise. He drove home to his empty mansion, and for once the emptiness didn't feel like it was crushing him. He had somewhere to be in the morning. A little girl was expecting him. A woman had trusted him enough to invite him back. It wasn't much, but it was something. And for tonight, something was enough. Walter barely slept that night. After Sarah arrived, taking one look at his face and pulling him into a fierce hug, they'd talked for 3 hours. He told her everything. The plan, the pills, the park bench, the little girl who'd interrupted his final moments, the invitation that had changed everything. Sarah had cried. Then she'd gotten angry. Then she'd cried again, but mostly she'd listened. And when he finally finished, she'd said, I'm staying tonight. And tomorrow we're finding you a therapist. A good one, because Walter, this can't happen again. You can't come this close and not get help. He'd agreed. What else could he do? Now, at 7:30 on Christmas morning, Walter stood in front of his bathroom mirror trying to make himself presentable. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, his face drawn and haggard. He looked every one of his 72 years. You look like hell, Sarah said from the doorway. She'd slept on his couch, unwilling to leave him alone. Thank you for that assessment. I'm coming with you. Walter turned to face her. What? To this Sharon and Maya's apartment. I'm coming with you. You're not in any condition to be alone, and I want to meet the people who saved my brother's life. Sarah, I don't think I'm not asking, Walter. I'm coming, deal with it. So at 8 o'clock Walter and Sarah stood outside Sharon's apartment building. Walter pressed the buzzer. Hello? Sharon's voice crackled through the intercom. It's Walter. And my sister Sarah. She insisted on coming. I hope that's all right. There was a pause then, of course. Come on up. Sharon answered the door in comfortable jeans and a festive red sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes went to Sarah first, assessing, then to Walter. Whatever she saw in his face made her expression soften. You didn't sleep, she said quietly. Not much, Walter admitted. But he called his sister. Sarah interjected, stepping forward and offering her hand. Sarah Hammond, thank you for what you did yesterday. My brother told me everything. Sharon shook her hand, studying Sarah's face. I'm glad he called you. Come in, both of you. Maya's been up since 6 waiting. Mr. Walter. Maya appeared from around the corner, already dressed in her purple church dress, bouncing with excitement. You came back, and you brought a friend. This is my sister Sarah, Walter said. Hi, Miss Sarah. It's Christmas. Do you want to see my room? I can show you my stuffed animals. Sarah laughed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. I'd love that. Maya grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her down the hallway, chattering enthusiastically. Walter and Sharon were left alone in the small living room. How are you really? Sharon asked softly. Did you? I threw away the pills, and I called Sarah. She stayed with me all night. We talked. She's making me see a therapist after the holidays. Relief flooded Sharon's face. Good. That's good, Walter. I almost didn't come this morning. I almost called and made an excuse. Being around people pretending to be okay, it felt impossible. You don't have to pretend here. We know you're not okay. That's all right. Walter felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you for that. Maya reappeared, dragging Sarah behind her. Mama, can we open presents now? Please, please, please. Sharon laughed. Yes, sweetie, we can open presents now. The living room was filled with soft morning light filtering through the thin curtains. The Christmas tree looked even more magical in the gentle daylight, each mismatched ornament clearly telling its own story. Under the tree sat a modest pile of presents, maybe 6 or 7 boxes, all wrapped in paper that had been carefully saved and reused from previous years, the tape marks still visible. Mr. Walter and Miss Sarah should go first, Maya declared with the authority of a Supreme Court judge, since there are special guests. Oh, we don't have anything to open, Walter said quickly, feeling awkward. This is your Christmas, not ours. But Maya was already pulling a small package from under the tree with determined purpose. This one is for you, Mr. Walter. Mama and I made it last night after you left. Walter took the gift with genuinely trembling hands. It was wrapped in newspaper comics and tied with a piece of red yarn. Inside was a handmade card. The front featured Maya's careful drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled in uneven letters, Me, Mama, and Mr. Walter. Inside, in Sharon's neat, precise handwriting, it read, Thank you for spending Christmas with us. You're always welcome here. With love, Sharon and Maya. Walter couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely, overwhelmed by emotion. This simple card, made with love by people who barely knew him, meant more than any expensive gift he'd received in his entire privileged life. It meant someone had thought about him. Someone wanted him to return. Someone cared if he lived or died. Do you like it? Maya asked anxiously, studying his face. We worked really hard on it. I love it, Walter managed, his voice breaking. He looked at Sarah, who was also crying. Thank you both. This is the most meaningful gift I've received in years. Sarah cleared her throat. I'm sorry I didn't bring anything. I didn't know. You brought yourself, Sharon said warmly. That's gift enough. They watched as Maya tore into her presents with pure, uninhibited joy. There weren't many. A new set of colored pencils, a book about space exploration, a stuffed rabbit with soft gray fur, a challenging puzzle, and from Sharon, a beautiful purple dress for church. Maya hugged each gift like it was priceless treasure, her gratitude genuine and effusive. Walter noticed that Sharon didn't open anything for herself. When he asked about it, she simply smiled and said, Watching Maya open hers is gift enough for me. But Walter could see the worn edges of her sweater, the scuffs on her practical shoes. This woman gave everything to her daughter, and kept nothing for herself. After presents, Sharon made breakfast, cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee. They sat around the small table, Maya between Sarah and Walter, chattering about her presents and what she hoped to do today. Walter found himself relaxing incrementally. The tightness in his chest that had been constant since Catherine died loosened slightly. The mental fog lifted just enough that he could focus on the conversation, on Maya's enthusiasm, on the warmth of this small, modest apartment. Sarah caught his eye across the table and mouthed, Thank you. He knew what she meant. Thank you for not taking those pills. Thank you for still being here. After breakfast, Maya wanted to play with her new puzzle. Sarah offered to help, giving Walter and Sharon a moment alone in the kitchen as they cleaned up. Your sister is nice, Sharon said as they worked. She is. We used to be closer before Catherine died. I pushed her away, pushed everyone away. Grief does that sometimes, makes you want to isolate. Is that what you did? Sharon shook her head. No, I did the opposite. I clung to people, my mother, my friends, my church community. I was terrified that if I was alone I'd drown, so I made sure I was never alone. She paused, but I think isolation would have been easier in some ways. When you're surrounded by people, you have to keep functioning. Keep pretending you're okay even when you're not. At least isolation is honest. I thought isolation would let me feel what I needed to feel without burdening anyone. But it just made everything worse. The silence became deafening. So maybe the answer is somewhere in between. Not isolation, but not constant performance either. Just honest connection with people who can handle seeing you at your worst. Walter dried the last dish. Is that what this is? Honest connection? I think so. I'm not going to pretend you're fine. You're clearly not fine, but you're here, and you're trying, and that matters. Sharon, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you really invite me yesterday? The real reason, not just because Maya suggested it. Sharon was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. 5 years ago, after Marcus died, I stood in my bathroom with a bottle of his pain medication. He'd been prescribed it for an old injury, never finished it. And I thought maybe it would be easier to just stop, to not have to figure out how to raise Maya alone, how to pay the bills alone, how to exist in a world where Marcus didn't. Walter's breath caught. My mother found me, Sharon continued softly. She'd stopped by unexpectedly to drop off groceries, walked in and saw me standing there with that bottle, staring at it. She didn't say anything dramatic, just took the bottle, poured the pills down the toilet, and said, "Not today. Today you're going to eat something and take a nap, and we'll deal with tomorrow when it comes." She saved your life. Yes, and yesterday when I saw you on that bench, when I saw your face, I recognized that look. The one I must have had when I was holding those pills. Maya was already walking toward you before I could stop her, and I thought maybe this was my chance to do for someone else what my mother did for me. To say not today, to offer you a reason to make it through one more day. Walter felt tears sliding down his cheeks. You did. You absolutely did. Good, because Walter, I don't know what your life is like, or what resources you have, or how you're going to heal from losing your wife. But I know that today, you're here, and tomorrow you'll wake up and maybe it will be a little easier to choose life again. And the day after that, and the day after that, until one day you realize you're not just choosing to survive, you're actually living. Did that happen for you? Did it get easier? Eventually, not quickly, not in a straight line, but yes, it got easier. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. From the living room came the sounds of Maya and Sarah laughing over the puzzle. What are you doing for the rest of today? Sharon asked. Do you have plans? Nothing. Sarah will probably insist on staying with me again. But no plans. Would you and Sarah like to stay for lunch? Nothing fancy, just leftovers from yesterday, but we'd enjoy the company. Walter hesitated. Part of him wanted to retreat, to go back to his empty house and his familiar isolation. But another part, a part that felt fragile and new and tentatively hopeful, wanted to stay. We'd love to, he heard himself say. If you're sure we're not imposing, you're not imposing. You're guests who are quickly becoming friends. They rejoined Sarah and Maya in the living room. The puzzle was taking shape on the floor, a colorful image of the solar system. Maya was explaining something about each planet to Sarah, who listened with genuine interest. You're really good at science, Sarah told her. I love science. I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. Or maybe a doctor like Mama wants to be. Mama wants to be a doctor, Walter asked, surprised. Sharon flushed slightly. It's just a dream. I started pre-med in community college years ago, but life got in the way. After Maya came along, it didn't make sense financially. Maybe someday. Why not now? Sarah asked. I'm 43 years old, working full-time to support us, raising Maya alone. Medical school isn't realistic at this point in my life, but if circumstances were different, Sarah pressed, if I won the lottery and didn't have to work, sure, I'd go back to school in a heartbeat. Sharon smiled, but Walter could see the wistfulness in her eyes. But that's not reality. Reality is I'm an administrative assistant who's grateful to have steady employment and health insurance. Walter filed this information away, thoughtful, but he didn't push. Instead he asked, what about you, Maya? What subject do you like best in school? Science, Maya said immediately, and reading, but not math. Math is hard. I can help you with math. Walter found himself offering. I was good at math when I was young. Really, would you? Mr. Smith, our teacher, gives us homework over winter break and I don't understand the fractions part. I'd be happy to help. They spent the rest of the morning working on Maya's math homework at the kitchen table. Walter found himself engaged in a way he hadn't been in years. Explaining concepts to an eager 7-year-old required patience and creativity. He had to find ways to make abstract ideas concrete. Sarah and Sharon sat on the couch,
talking quietly. Walter caught fragments of their conversation. Sharon asking about Walter's life before Catherine died. Sarah sharing stories, both of them acknowledging the difficulty of loving someone with that kind of grief. Lunch was indeed leftovers, but it tasted just as good as yesterday. They played board games afterward, Candyland and Go Fish. Maya's competitive spirit was fierce, but she was gracious in both victory and defeat. As the afternoon wore on, Walter felt the edges of his darkness creeping back. The constant social interaction, the effort of being okay, even when he wasn't, the exhaustion of existing when all he wanted was to stop, it all began to weigh on him. Sharon noticed. She had an uncanny ability to read his face. "Walter, there's a book on the balcony, would you mind grabbing it for me? I left it out there yesterday." He understood the implicit offer, a moment alone, a chance to breathe, an escape hatch if he needed it. He stepped out onto the small balcony. It overlooked a busy street, now quiet on Christmas afternoon. The cold air bit at his face, but it felt good, clarifying. The door opened behind him. Sharon stepped out, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the cold. "I'm okay," Walter said before she could ask. "I know, but I thought you might want company that doesn't require talking." They stood together in silence, watching the occasional car pass below, the Christmas lights twinkling in windows across the street. "This morning I woke up and forgot for a moment," Walter said quietly. "Forgot that Catherine was gone, reached across the bed for her, and then I remembered, and it felt like drowning all over again." "Does that happen often?" "Every morning, every single morning for 4 years. I'm sorry. The therapist Sarah's making me see what if talking about it just makes it worse. What if digging into the grief makes it consume me completely? What if not dealing with it keeps you trapped forever?" Sharon countered gently. "You came very close yesterday, Walter, very close. Something has to change." "I know, I'm just scared." "Being scared means you still want to live. That's good." Walter turned to look at her. "How did you get to be so wise?" Sharon laughed softly. "I'm not wise, I'm just 5 years ahead of you on this terrible journey. And I can tell you that it does get better. Not because you forget, or because the pain goes away, but because you learn to carry it differently. You learn that you can hold grief in one hand and joy in the other. They can coexist. I don't feel capable of joy anymore. You smiled this morning. When Maya explained her puzzle to you, I saw it. That's not joy. That's just, I don't know, politeness. It's the beginning of joy. Small and fragile and barely there. But it's something, Walter. Hold on to it." They stood together a while longer before going back inside. Sarah was getting ready to leave, looking reluctant. "I can stay another night," she offered Walter. "If you need me to." Walter looked at Sharon and Maya, at this small apartment that had become a temporary refuge. "I think I'll be okay tonight. But thank you, for everything. For coming, for staying last night, for not giving up on me." Sarah hugged him tightly. "Never, you're my baby brother, I'm never giving up on you." After Sarah left, Walter prepared to leave as well, but Maya's face fell. "Do you have to go? Can't you stay for dinner?" "Maya, mister, Walter has his own home," Sharon said gently. "He needs to go rest." But Maya's eyes welled with tears. "What if he's sad again? What if he needs us?" Sharon looked at Walter, a question in her eyes. Walter knelt down to Maya's level. "You know what, you're right, I might be sad again. But now I have your mama's phone number, and I have an invitation to come back. That helps more than you know. Promise you'll come back. Promise you won't stay alone being sad. I promise I'll call if I need to. And I'd love to come visit again if your mama says it's okay." "It's more than okay," Sharon said. "You're welcome anytime, Walter, I mean that." As Walter walked to his car, he felt the weight of the promise he'd just made. He had people who expected him to continue existing. People who would notice if he disappeared. People who cared. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had 2 days ago. And sometimes, a small reason was enough to keep going for one more day. The days after Christmas blurred together. Walter kept his promise to Sarah and started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patricia Reeves, a woman in her 60s who'd specialized in grief counseling for 30 years. The sessions were brutal. Catherine's death, the loneliness, the suicidal ideation, Everything Walter had been avoiding for 4 years came spilling out in that quiet office. "You've been in survival mode," Dr. Reeves told him during their 3rd session. "Just trying to make it through each day without falling completely apart. That's not sustainable long term. So what do I do instead? You start actually living again. Small steps, connection with others, finding purpose beyond just existing." Walter thought about Sharon and Maya. He'd been texting Sharon periodically, checking in, making sure his presence hadn't been a burden. She always responded warmly, sharing small updates about Maya, asking how he was doing. On January 10th, 3 weeks after Christmas, Sharon's text came with a different tone. "Bad day at work. Sorry to vent." Walter called her immediately. "What happened?" "Nothing dramatic, just my supervisor. He's been making things difficult lately." "Difficult how?" Sharon hesitated. "Can we talk about it in person? I don't want to get into it over the phone." "I can come over tonight if you'd like. Maya has a playdate until 7. Could you come at 7:30? That way we can actually talk without little ears listening." Walter arrived at 7:25, carrying Chinese takeout. Sharon answered the door looking exhausted, still in her work clothes, her eyes red-rimmed. "You didn't have to bring food," she said, but accepted it gratefully. "Have you eaten today? Does coffee count?" "No, Sharon, coffee does not count." They sat at her small kitchen table, serving themselves lomian and dumplings. Sharon picked at her food, clearly upset about something, but not sure where to start. "Tell me about your supervisor," Walter prompted gently. The story came out slowly, painfully. Gerald Patterson had taken over as her supervisor 10 months ago. Since then, he'd been systematically undermining her, giving her impossible deadlines, contradictory instructions, menial tasks despite her experience, passing her over for projects that went to less experienced colleagues, all done subtly enough that it was hard to document or prove. "Today he reassigned me to handle filing and copying exclusively," Sharon said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Essentially a demotion without the formal title change that would trigger HR oversight. He said it better suits my skill level." Walter felt rage building in his chest. "That's discrimination." "Is it though? He never says anything overtly racist or sexist. He's too smart for that. It's all just death by 1,000 cuts. Impossible standards, constant criticism, watching others advance while I stay stuck. But I can't prove it's discrimination. I just look like I'm not performing well." "Have you reported it to HR?" Sharon laughed bitterly. "I tried once. They said I needed to document specific instances. But how do you document a tone of voice, a dismissive attitude, the way he smiles when giving me degrading tasks? Each individual incident seems small. It's the pattern that's crushing me." "What about looking for another job?" "I've been trying for months, but I'm 43, no college degree, competing with people half my age who have credentials I don't. Most places never even call me back." Walter set down his chopsticks. "Sharon, I know people, in various industries. I could make some introductions if you'd like. Not charity, just opening doors so you can show them what you're capable of." Sharon's eyes filled with tears. "I hate that I need help. I hate feeling like I'm failing. I've always managed on my own." "Accepting help isn't failing. It's being smart enough to recognize when you need support. Like you accepting help from me and Maya." "Exactly like that." Sharon wiped her eyes. "I don't want charity, Walter. But if you know someone looking for a capable administrative professional, I'd appreciate an introduction. Just an introduction. I'll earn the job on my own merit. I'll make some calls tomorrow." They talked for another hour, Sharon gradually relaxing as she vented her frustration and fear. When Maya returned home at 8:30, bouncing with energy from her playdate, Sharon had regained some of her composure. "Mr. Walter," Maya threw herself at him in a hug. "Are you staying for cocoa? Mama makes the best cocoa on Thursdays. Does she make different cocoa on other days?" Walter asked seriously. "No, it's always the same. But Thursdays feel special somehow." Walter laughed, actually laughed, and caught Sharon smiling at him. "I'd love to stay for cocoa." Over the next 2 weeks Walter made good on his promise. He reached out to professional contacts, carefully mentioning that he knew an exceptional administrative professional who might be looking for new opportunities. Would they be willing to meet with her? 3 companies expressed interest, but before Sharon could interview, Walter received a call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning, late January. Walter was at his office, Pierce Hammond Industries headquarters, reviewing quarterly reports when his phone rang. Gerald Patterson, Sharon's supervisor. Walter's blood ran cold. How had Gerald gotten his number? Mr. Hammond, I'm calling regarding one of my employees, Sharon Bennett. I understand you've been making inquiries on her behalf. What business is that of yours? I want to make sure potential employers have complete information. Miss Bennett's performance has been problematic. Chronic issues with meeting deadlines, inability to handle complex tasks, resistance to feedback. I'd hate for someone of your stature to be embarrassed by recommending someone who doesn't live up to expectations. The threat was barely veiled. Gerald was trying to sabotage Sharon's job search. I see, Walter said, his voice carefully neutral. Thank you for the information. He hung up and immediately called Sharon. I need you to trust me. Can you leave work early today? Meet me at my office at 3. Walter, what's wrong? Just trust me, please. Sharon arrived at Pierce Hammond headquarters at 3 o'clock, looking nervous. Walter's assistant showed her directly to his corner office. I don't understand, Sharon said, looking around at the expensive furniture, the view of the Philadelphia skyline. Why am I here? Gerald called me this morning. He's trying to sabotage your job search. Sharon's face went pale. How did he even know? Someone must have told him I was making inquiries. Or he's monitoring your references. Either way, he's actively working against you. Sharon sank into a chair. So what do I do? If he's bad-mouthing me to potential employers, I'll never find anything. You're going to interview with 3 companies who've already expressed interest, and I'm going to make sure Gerald's lies don't matter. But Sharon, I need to tell you something first. I haven't been entirely honest about the extent of my resources. What do you mean? Walter gestured around the office. Pierce Hammond Industries isn't just my company. I own it. Completely. It's worth several $100 million. And I employ over 3,000 people. Sharon stared at him. You're a billionaire. Does that change anything? I don't know. Maybe, you should have told me. I didn't want you to see me differently. Everyone sees the money first, the person second. You and Maya, you saw me. Just me. That was precious. Sharon was quiet for a long moment. I understand, but Walter, this makes the power dynamic different. You offering to help me find a job when you have this much influence, it feels less like a friend helping, and more like, I don't know, pity. It's not pity. It's recognizing injustice and having the resources to address it. Sharon, people like Gerald thrive because people like me don't pay attention. I've spent 4 years in a grief-induced fog, ignoring what happens in my own company, let alone the broader business community. You opened my eyes. Now I want to help. Not because I pity you, but because it's right. What if I fail? What if I get one of these jobs and I'm not good enough? Then you'll learn and get better. But Sharon, you won't fail. Gerald has convinced you that you're inadequate. You're not. You're exceptionally capable. You just need a chance to prove it in an environment that isn't actively trying to undermine you. Sharon wiped her eyes. Okay, I'll interview, but if I get a job, it has to be on my merit. Promise me you won't put pressure on anyone to hire me. I promise. All I'm doing is opening the door. You'll walk through it on your own strength. Over the next week, Sharon interviewed at 3 companies. The first interview went poorly. She was defensive, carrying too much anger from her experience with Gerald. The second was better but still rocky. The third, at a growing tech company called Tech Venture Solutions, went well. The CFO, Patricia Rogers, was impressed. Walter Hammond spoke highly of you, Patricia said. But I make my own judgments. Your experience and problem-solving approach are exactly what we need. I'd like to offer you the position. 20% higher salary than your current position, full benefits, room for advancement based on performance. Sharon felt tears of relief prick her eyes. I'm very interested. Thank you. Excellent. Can you start in 3 weeks? When Sharon told Walter the news, he took her and Maya out to celebrate at a modest Italian restaurant. You did this, he told her over dinner. You earned that job. You opened the door. But you walked through it. There's a difference. Maya, oblivious to the deeper conversation, was just excited to eat spaghetti and celebrate her mama's success. But Walter was thinking about something else. Sharon's situation had crystallized something in his mind. For 4 years, he'd been so consumed by his own grief that he'd stopped paying attention to the world around him. He'd stopped caring about whether his company treated people fairly, whether he was using his resources responsibly, whether his wealth was doing any good beyond accumulating more wealth.
Catherine would have been ashamed of him. She'd always believed that privilege came with responsibility, that those who had much owed much. It was time to start paying attention again. The next morning, Walter called an emergency meeting with his HR director. I want a complete audit of our hiring, promotion and compensation practices, he said. Gender, race, age, everything. I want to know if we're treating people fairly. The HR director, Martin Hayes, looked uncomfortable. Mr. Hammond, I'm not sure that's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Get it done. I want preliminary results in 2 weeks. Then Walter did something he'd never done before. He went undercover in his own company. He arranged it quietly through a trusted security manager. No one else knew. For 1 week Walter worked alongside his company's night cleaning crew, his administrative staff, his construction workers. He wanted to see what they saw, experience what they experienced. What he found disturbed him profoundly. The cleaning crew worked overnight shifts for barely above minimum wage with no benefits. He met Maria, a 52-year-old woman who took 2 buses each way to clean his offices, then went home to sleep 4 hours before her second job. My daughter's in college, she told him during a break. First in our family, I do what I have to do. He worked alongside his administrative staff and observed subtle but unmistakable patterns of discrimination. Women consistently paid less than men in equivalent positions. Women of color consistently passed over for promotions. He spent 2 days at a construction site, watching workers labor in dangerous conditions with minimal safety equipment and no paid sick leave. By the end of the week, Walter felt physically ill. He'd built an empire by exploiting people. Maybe not intentionally, but the result was the same. His company profited while workers struggled. Catherine would have been ashamed. He was ashamed. It was time to make changes. Walter sat in his home office surrounded by reports from the HR audit. The numbers confirmed what he'd observed during his week undercover. Pierce Hammond Industries had serious systemic problems. Gender pay gap. Women earned on average 18% less than men in equivalent positions. Racial disparities. People of color comprised 37% of hourly workers, but only 8% of management. Benefits. Part-time workers, predominantly women, predominantly people of color, received minimal benefits despite working 35 hours per week. Safety. OSHA violations at construction sites had been quietly settled rather than addressed. Walter had built this. Oh, he hadn't created these policies explicitly. They'd evolved over years as various executives made incremental decisions. But he'd been asleep at the wheel. He'd stopped paying attention after Catherine died, leaving others to run the company while he drowned in grief. No more. He called a meeting with his executive team for February 15th. All 8 of them, the CFO, COO, General Counsel, heads of HR, operations, development, construction and finance. Gentlemen, Walter began, and yes, he noticed they were all men. I've been reviewing our employment practices. We have serious problems that need addressing. James Thornton, his CFO for 20 years, leaned forward. What kind of problems? Walter presented the audit results methodically. The pay gaps, the promotion disparities, the benefit structure that disadvantaged the most vulnerable workers, the safety violations. The room grew tense. Walter, James said carefully, these are industry standard practices. Every real estate development company operates this way. Then the industry needs to change. That's not our responsibility. It's absolutely our responsibility. We're perpetuating a system that exploits workers. I want changes implemented. Immediately, Martin Hayes, the HR director, spoke up. What kind of changes? First, a comprehensive pay equity adjustment. Women and people of color in equivalent positions get paid equivalently, no exceptions. Second, mandatory safety upgrades at all construction sites. Third, benefits extended to all employees working more than 20 hours per week. Fourth, paid sick leave across the board. Fifth, a commitment to diversifying management. The room erupted. That's financial suicide. James said flatly, do you have any idea what this will cost? Show me the numbers. James opened his laptop, pulled up spreadsheets, pay equity adjustments. 8 million year 1, benefits expansion 4 million annually, safety upgrades 6 million one-time cost, sick leave estimated 2 million annually. We're talking $20 million in the first year alone. That's a huge hit to profitability. What's our current profit margin? 22%. And with these changes, drops to maybe 17%. Maybe less if productivity doesn't improve. Walter looked around the table. Any company in this industry would be thrilled with 17% margins. We've been extracting 22% by underpaying and underprotecting people who can't fight back. That's not good business, that's exploitation, that's capitalism, Martin said quietly. Then maybe capitalism needs to evolve. James stood up. Walter, I've worked with you for 20 years, I've never questioned your judgment, but this, he gestured at the proposed changes. This isn't judgment, this is grief. You've been different since Catherine died. We all understand that, but you can't destroy a company because you're trying to find meaning after losing your wife. The room went silent. Walter stood slowly. Don't you dare bring Catherine into this. She would be ashamed of what we've become. I'm ashamed of what we've become. These changes are happening. If you can't support them, you're welcome to resign. Then I resign, James said. Effective immediately. Walter felt like he'd been punched. James had been his friend, his trusted advisor since the company's founding. But James walked out without looking back. 2 other executives followed him. The remaining 5 executives looked shaken. Walter met each of their eyes. Anyone else want to leave? Now's your chance. No one moved. Good, then let's figure out how to implement these changes properly. I want a plan on my desk in 2 weeks. After they filed out, Walter sat alone in the conference room shaking. He'd just lost 3 senior executives. He might have just destabilized his entire company. The board would be furious. Shareholders would revolt. His phone buzzed. Sharon, how are you? Haven't heard from you in a few days. Walter called her. Can I come over tonight? I need to talk. Of course. What's wrong? Everything. I'll explain when I get there. That evening, Walter sat at Sharon's kitchen table and told her everything. The audit results, the undercover week, the meeting, the resignations. I might have just destroyed my company, he said. The board is going to try to remove me. Shareholders will revolt. Stock price will tank. Everything I built with Catherine might collapse. Sharon was quiet for a long moment. Why are you doing this, Walter? Really? Because it's right. That's not enough of an answer. You're risking everything. There has to be more. Walter thought carefully. You asked me once how I got through each day after Catherine died. The truth is I didn't. I just existed. Went through the motions. Nothing mattered because she was gone. But then I met you and Maya. You saved my life. And in doing so you opened my eyes to how many other people are drowning. People like you, dealing with Gerald. People like Maria, working 2 jobs to send her daughter to college. People like the construction workers risking their lives with inadequate safety equipment. I've been so focused on my own pain that I stopped seeing anyone else's. Catherine would have been appalled. So yes, I'm doing this because it's right. But I'm also doing it because maybe, just maybe, if I can help other people, my life will mean something again. Maybe I can build a legacy Catherine would be proud of. Sharon reached across the table and took his hand. Are you doing this because you care about workers' rights, or are you trying to save everyone because you couldn't save Catherine? The question hit like a physical blow. I don't know, Walter admitted. Maybe both. Then you need to figure that out. Because if you're doing this just to assuage guilt or find purpose, it won't last. Real change requires sustainable commitment, not grand gestures born from grief. Are you saying I shouldn't do this? No, I'm saying you need to be honest about your motivations, with yourself first, then with everyone else. Because if the board challenges you, if shareholders revolt, if everything gets hard, and it will get hard, you need to know why you're fighting. You need to know it's about more than just trying to fill the hole Catherine left.
Walter pulled his hand away, stung. That's not fair, isn't it? Walter, I care about you, but I've watched you go from suicidal to reformer in 6 weeks. That's a dramatic shift. I want to make sure it's grounded in something real, not just a different manifestation of the same grief that almost killed you. So what do you want me to do? Talk to your therapist. Really dig into this. Make sure you're stable enough for the fight ahead, because what you're proposing, it's going to be brutal. Companies don't change easily. People don't give up power willingly. You need to be sure. Walter left Sharon's apartment feeling angry and confused, but as he drove home her words kept echoing. Was he doing this for the right reasons, or was Sharon correct? Was this just another way of running from his grief? At his next therapy session, Walter raised the question with Dr. Reeves. Am I trying to save workers because it's right, or am I trying to save everyone because I couldn't save Catherine? Dr. Reeves leaned back in her chair. What do you think? I think maybe both. I think I saw Sharon being mistreated and it triggered something. Made me realize I've been blind to suffering while I wallowed in my own. But I also think maybe I'm hoping that if I save enough people, it will make Catherine's death mean something. Like she died so I could wake up and do better. That's a heavy burden to place on corporate reform. So I shouldn't do it. I didn't say that. But you need to separate your personal healing from your professional actions. Reforming your company can be the right thing to do, and be part of your grief processing. The two aren't mutually exclusive, but you can't expect changing your company to heal your grief. That work is separate. So what do? You keep coming here. You keep processing Catherine's death, and separately you pursue these reforms if you believe they're right, not because you're trying to earn redemption, but because they align with your values. Can you do that? I don't know. I'm so tired, Dr. Reeves, tired of hurting, tired of fighting, tired of everything. I know, but Walter, you're still here, you're still trying. That counts for something. Walter went home and spent 3 days thinking. He barely ate, barely slept. He reviewed the proposed reforms, thought about the workers he'd met, thought about Sharon's struggle with Gerald, thought about Maria working 2 jobs. Finally he made his decision. He was going through with the reforms, not because it would heal his grief. Sharon and Dr. Reeves were right, it wouldn't. But because it was the right thing to do, because Catherine had raised him to believe that privilege came with responsibility, because he had resources and influence, and could make a difference. The grief would still be there. He'd still wake up every morning reaching for Catherine, still feel the crushing loneliness, still have moments where he wanted to stop existing. But he'd also do something meaningful with his life. He called an emergency board meeting. The board meeting was set for March 1st, on the 35th floor of Pierce Hammond Industries. All 9 board members were present, along with several major shareholders. Walter arrived early, folders in hand, dressed in his best suit. Today would determine the future of his reforms, and possibly his career. The board members filed in, faces tight with suspicion. Elizabeth Smith, the most senior, sat directly across from him. This better be important, she said. An emergency meeting with shareholders present is no small matter. It is important, Walter replied. I'm proposing major changes to how we operate. For the next hour, he laid everything out: audit results, wage disparities, safety failures, the cost of reforms, and long-term projections from companies that had implemented similar measures. When he finished, silence hung heavy. Then James Thornton, former CFO, stood. Everything Walter said sounds noble, he began. But let's be honest about what he didn't mention. These reforms will cost over $20 million in year 1, slash our margins, and weaken our competitive standing. And they're driven not by strategic insight, but by Walter's unresolved grief. Walter's jaw tightened. That is not, isn't it? James cut him off. I knew Catherine. Her death devastated you, but you cannot use this company to soothe your guilt. I'm not destroying anything, Walter said evenly. I'm trying to build something better. By alienating shareholders, Elizabeth leaned forward. Walter, I don't disagree with the ethics of your proposal, but the timing and scale concern me. Why not a phased approach, gradual implementation? Because gradual means people keep suffering, Walter replied. I'm not willing to wait years to fix what we already know is broken. Elizabeth exhaled slowly. Then perhaps you're not in the right frame of mind to lead. I move for a vote of no confidence. Walter felt the world tilt. Seconded, another board member said. Before the vote, Margaret Foster spoke up. I'd like to hear more about the long-term business case. Walter seized the lifeline. For 20 more minutes he presented detailed projections, reduced turnover saving millions, improved safety lowering insurance costs, increased employee satisfaction boosting productivity. Ethical reform wasn't charity, it was sustainability. But Elizabeth shook her head. The short-term hit is still steep. Short-term pain, Walter said quietly, for long-term strength. 2 more hours of tense debate followed. Finally Elizabeth called for the vote, all in favor of removing Walter Hammond from leadership. 5 hands lifted, all opposed, 4. Walter had survived, but by a single vote. Elizabeth adjusted her glasses. Walter, you remain CEO, but this board is watching. If these reforms destabilize us, we will revisit this. After the meeting Margaret approached him. That was too close, she said. If you want these reforms to stick, you must execute flawlessly. And Walter, 5 board members voted to remove you. You need allies. Over the next month Walter worked relentlessly. He promoted Margaret to vice chair. He replaced 3 resigning executives with leaders known for strong ethics. The pay equity adjustments went through first. 8 million redistributed across departments. Rumblings followed. Some men complained about women receiving raises, others complained about employees of color being paid fairly. Walter stood firm. Then came 6 million in safety upgrades across construction sites. Benefits expansion was scheduled for July, pending HR restructuring. The media noticed. Pierce Hammond CEO pushes sweeping reforms. One headline read. The article was cautiously optimistic, but highlighted shareholder anxiety. Then came backlash. An industry trade group published Hammond's reforms, noble but naive. Competitors criticized him publicly. A major client canceled a contract citing financial uncertainty. Stock prices fell 8%. Shareholders began calling for another vote of no confidence. Hate mail poured in. One email read, "You're destroying everything Catherine built. She would be ashamed." That one hit like a blow. Walter was staring at the email when his assistant buzzed. "A woman is here to see you. Maria Gonzalez, Maria from the night cleaning crew, send her in." She entered nervously. "Mr. Hammond, I'm sorry to bother you." "You're not. Please, sit." She clutched her purse. "I just wanted to thank you. The raise, the benefits. My daughter can quit her part-time job now. She can focus on school. Because of you, Mr. Hammond, you changed our lives." Walter felt a lump rise in his throat. "That's why I did this, Maria. Thank you for telling me." After she left he sat in silence, overwhelmed, not by doubt this time, but by clarity. This was the work that mattered. His phone rang. "Sharon, I saw the news about the stock drop," she said gently. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," he admitted. "The board may try to remove me again, and this time, they might succeed." "Do you regret what you're doing?" He hesitated, then answered honestly, "No. Even if I lose everything, I don't regret it." "Good, because I met Maria yesterday at church. You should have seen her face, Walter. You gave her hope, and hope matters more than stock prices." "The board doesn't think so. Boards think about quarters. You're thinking about people. That's what leadership is." After they hung up, Walter opened his desk drawer and lifted a photo of Catherine, laughing on their 40th anniversary. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I hope I'm doing this right." His phone buzzed. "Sarah, proud of you. Don't give up." Another message from Dr. Reeves. "Your worth isn't measured in stock prices." Then one from Maya. "Mama says you're helping people." "That's cool. Can we get ice cream this weekend?" Walter laughed softly, tears in his eyes. He was losing money, facing a hostile board, enduring industry backlash, but he was helping people, truly helping them. Catherine would have approved. The next board meeting was set for April 15th. 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prove his vision worked. 6 weeks to save everything, or lose it all trying. By mid-April, the impact of Walter's reforms was undeniable. Some results were promising. Employee satisfaction had risen, turnover had dropped 32%, and talented candidates were applying specifically because Pierce Hammond was gaining a reputation as an ethical employer. But the financial hit was brutal. First quarter profits were down 18%. The stock price had dropped 15% from its peak. 3 major clients had walked away, citing concerns about stability. Industry journals questioned Walter's judgment. Some even suggested he was losing his grip. Then came the worst blow. Walter discovered that Robert Chang, his VP of operations and someone he'd considered a friend for 12 years, had been sabotaging the reforms from inside, creating inefficiencies, leaking negative stories to the press, encouraging employees to resist new policies. Why? Walter demanded during their confrontation. Robert didn't flinch. Because you've lost perspective. You used to understand business. Now you're on some grief-fueled crusade to save the world. Someone had to stop you. So you sabotaged me. I tried to save the company from you. Get out, Walter said, voice shaking. You're fired. After Robert left, the office felt colder than ever. Betrayal gnawed at him. How many others saw him as unstable? How many were waiting for him to fail? His phone rang. Sharon, can you pick up Maya? My meeting's running late. Walter seized the distraction. At Lincoln Elementary, Maya ran to him, bright as ever. Mr. Walter, why are you here? Your mama's busy. Can we get frozen yogurt? If she says yes, he smiled. In the yogurt shop, Maya chattered joyfully until her expression softened. Mr. Walter, are you sad? He hesitated, a little, because of your wife. Walter blinked. Your mama told you about Catherine. She said you lost someone you loved. That's why you were crying when I met you. That's right. Do you still miss her? Every day. Maya considered this. Mama misses my daddy too. She says it's okay to be sad, but we can't let the sad make us forget to be happy. We have to hold both. Walter felt something tighten in his chest. Your mama is very wise, so you can be sad about your wife, but happy about frozen yogurt, both at the same time. He laughed. I'll try. After dinner at Sharon's, he told her about firing Robert. She listened quietly on the balcony as city lights flickered below. He called me self-righteous, Walter said I'm destroying the company. Are you? Walter stiffened. You too. I said are you? Meaning have you asked yourself that? Not because I agree with him. He exhaled. Everything's falling apart. Stock down. Clients leaving. The board circling. Maybe he was right. Sharon rested her elbows on the railing. I started my job at Tech Venture 3 weeks ago. I know. I'm thriving, Walter. Because someone opened a door for me when I was trapped. Someone with power looked at my situation and said, this isn't right. That someone was you. He swallowed. Your reforms do the same thing, she continued. Opening doors, changing trajectories. Maria's daughter can focus on school. 43 women got raises that changed household incomes. Workers have safety gear that might save their lives. That's not abstract, Walter. That's real. Even if the company collapses, even then, because trying to do good isn't failure. Walter stared down at his hands. I'm scared. She touched his wrist lightly. Only people who care are scared. A long silence. Sharon, may I ask you something personal? Of course. You once said you wanted to go to medical school. Is that still true? She laughed softly. It was a dream. Life got in the way, but if it were possible. In a heartbeat, Walter tucked this away. The second vote of no confidence was set for April 25th, 1 week away. He told Dr. Reeves he was thinking of letting the board remove him. Do you want to quit because you're tired? She asked. Or because you don't believe you deserve to succeed at something after Catherine's death? Walter froze. Because if you don't believe you deserve to build anything meaningful, she continued gently, then of course you'll sabotage yourself. That night, Walter went to Catherine's old office, a shrine he'd preserved untouched for 4 years. Her books, her photos, the glasses she left on the desk the week before her diagnosis. He whispered to the empty air, I need you to tell me what to do. I'm trying to honor what mattered to you, but I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Silence. Just as he expected, he turned to leave, and a book slid off a shelf. Catherine's journal. He'd never read her journals out of respect, but the book lay open, and one passage caught his eye. Walter worries so much about money and success. I wish he understood none of that matters. What matters is whether we use what we have to make the world better. I hope after I'm gone, he doesn't spend his life accumulating wealth. I hope he uses his privilege for something meaningful. He read the passage again, and again. Tears blurred the ink. There was his answer. The next morning, he called Margaret. I'm not giving up, he said. I need your help, Margaret sighed. It's going to be close, maybe 5-4 against you, unless you can change minds. Then let me try. Arrange a meeting with the undecided members. She agreed. An informal dinner was arranged for April 23rd. 4 undecided board members came. Margaret David Liu, Rebecca Santos, and Thomas Wright. Walter spent hours preparing, not just financials, but stories, Maria and her daughter. The women whose raises changed their lives. A construction worker who said the new safety harness prevented a dangerous fall. The employee who'd thanked him for paid leave that allowed her to care for her dying mother. At the dinner, he spoke not as a CEO, but as a man trying to do right. I know the numbers look bad, he admitted. Profits down, stock down, clients fleeing. But I'm asking you to think long term, not 5 years 20. What do we want Pierce Hammond to stand for? Thomas crossed his arms. Legacy doesn't matter if we go bankrupt. We're not going bankrupt. We're still profitable, just less so while we invest in people. Or you're burning money, David countered. You're betting everything on a theory. Walter shook his head. I'm betting on people. On the idea that treating workers well strengthens an organization. Rebecca leaned forward. What about implementation? Competitors are working against you. Clients are nervous.
I plan to address that by succeeding, Walter said simply, by proving that ethical business practices can be profitable, and when we succeed, others will follow. Margaret frowned. It's ambitious, maybe too ambitious, maybe, but I'd rather fail doing something meaningful than succeed at exploitation. All I'm asking is time to prove this can work. The dinner ended without promises, but Walter saw something shift, expressions softer, eyes more contemplative. The vote was in 2 days. Everything hung in the balance, and this time Walter wasn't running from grief, he was fighting for who he was finally becoming. The vote went 5-4 in Walter's favor. Barely. One board member switching sides would have ended his tenure, but he'd survived. The months that followed were grueling. Walter worked 18-hour days meeting anxious clients, reassuring shareholders, and monitoring every detail of the reforms. Slowly the company stabilized, profits began to recover. By July it seemed the worst was behind him. Then August arrived. At 2:15 in the morning, Walter woke to the phone ringing. Mr. Hammond, this is Nurse Peterson at Jefferson Hospital. Your sister Sarah has been in a car accident. He was there within 20 minutes. Sarah had been hit by a drunk driver, broken leg, cracked ribs, severe concussion. She would recover, but it would take months. Emma and Jacob, she whispered, her 15-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son, they need somewhere to stay. Their father isn't an option. They'll stay with me, Walter said immediately, which was how, at 72, he became the temporary guardian of 2 traumatized teenagers. It was brutal. Emma lashed out in anger and grief. Jacob barely spoke, locking himself away for hours. Both feared losing their mother the way they'd lost their father 7 years earlier. Walter felt completely inadequate. He and Catherine had wanted children, but it had never happened. Now he was responsible for 2 hurting teenagers while battling his own exhaustion. He called Sharon. I can't do this, he confessed. Emma screamed she hates me. Jacob hasn't left his room in 36 hours. I'm failing them. You're not failing them, Sharon said gently. They're scared, just keep showing up. I'll come help. She arrived that evening with Maya, who somehow managed to break through the kids' grief. Her brightness nudged Emma into conversation and coaxed Jacob out long enough for board games. In the weeks that followed, Sharon became Walter's lifeline. She helped navigate emotional storms, mediated arguments, and offered maternal steadiness the teens desperately needed. Her mother Rose stepped in too, cooking meals and offering gentle wisdom. Gradually, the kids stabilized. Emma began doing homework again. Jacob started speaking more than monosyllables. But Walter was unraveling. August 15th, Catherine's death anniversary hit him like a blow. He couldn't get out of bed. For the first time in 40 years he called in sick. By afternoon he was still in his room, ignoring calls from work. By 5 p.m., he heard footsteps and Sharon's voice upstairs. Walter, your housekeeper let me in. I'm coming up. She found him sitting on the floor of Catherine's old office, surrounded by her photos and journals. I can't do this, he whispered. Not the company, not the kids, not life. Sharon sat beside him. Okay, that's it. Just okay. You're grieving, Walter. It's Catherine's anniversary. You've been fighting for months, and you're raising two scared teenagers. It's okay to break down. The kids need me. The company needs me, and I have nothing left. Then the kids can stay with me and Maya for a few days. Your executives can handle the company. You take time to breathe. I should have moved on by now. There's no timeline for grief. She hesitated. Walter, have you been taking your medication? He looked away. I stopped. It made me foggy. When? 2 months ago. Walter, she said softly but firmly. You can't fight depression alone. The medication isn't weakness. It keeps you steady enough to heal. I don't want to need medication. I need blood pressure meds. That doesn't make me weak. Mental health is health. Please start again. They talked for an hour. Sharon didn't offer platitudes. She simply stayed with him in the darkness. Finally Walter murmured, I keep thinking about that park bench. How close I came. How easy it would be to just stop. Are you thinking about that now? Sometimes, yes. Then we need more help. Intensive therapy, maybe inpatient. The company will survive a few weeks without you, but you won't survive without help. And he knew she was right. Okay, he whispered. I'll call Dr. Reeves. Restart the medication. Good. And Walter, you're not alone. You have me, Maya, Rose, Sarah, Emma, Jacob. We're your family. Let us help. Family, he echoed quietly. Walter took medical leave. 3 therapy sessions a week. Medication restarted. He began grieving Catherine honestly, instead of burying it under work. When Emma visited, she was subdued. Are you going to be okay? Eventually he said, that's okay, we can wait. By early September he returned to work part-time. The house regained rhythm, and for the first time, Walter stopped trying to be invincible. By October life had found structure again. Walter worked 4 days a week, rested Fridays and stayed consistent with therapy. Emma and Jacob lived with him during the school week, but spent weekends with Sarah, who was recovering steadily. Sharon and Maya were frequent visitors. Sunday dinners with Rose became tradition, filling Walter's once empty home with noise and warmth. The company's third-quarter numbers showed profits recovering. Employee retention continued improving. The reforms were proving sustainable. Then a new crisis appeared. A worker named James Mitchell filed a discrimination lawsuit against Pierce Hammond through the foundation's legal aid program. Walter didn't have a foundation. Not officially, but apparently he did now. It had started informally, Walter quietly funding legal help for workers facing discrimination. Sharon organized connections. Over months it grew into something resembling a system. Mitchell's lawsuit claimed retaliation. He had reported safety violations, then been fired 3 days later. Walter called Sharon. Why didn't you tell me? I was waiting until things settled with Emma. And, Walter, his claims are credible. If it's false, then prove it. But if it's true, you need to act. Walter launched a personal investigation. What he found disturbed him. Mitchell had indeed reported serious safety issues. 3 days later, his supervisor fired him for performance problems, despite excellent past reviews. The timing was too convenient. Walter summoned the supervisor. Did you fire Mitchell because he reported violations? He was slowing down work. We have deadlines. That's not the question. The supervisor looked irritated. Guys like him, they complain too much. They don't understand how construction works. His complaints were costing us money. You fired him for doing the right thing. I fired him for being a pain. Turn in your badge. You're terminated. Afterward, Walter called Mitchell's lawyer. We'll settle. Full back pay, legal fees, written apology, and reinstatement if he wants it. That's unusually generous, the lawyer said. It's right, but the board was furious. You've just admitted liability, Elizabeth said sharply during an emergency call. You're inviting lawsuits. If we did wrong we should fix it. You could have fought it. Why? He was right. The case went public. Some praised Walter's integrity. Others ridiculed his naivety. Within weeks 6 more employees filed claims, some legitimate, some opportunistic. Walter had to expand the legal team, but something else happened. Workers across Philadelphia heard the story. Pierce Hammond was a place where people were treated fairly. Job applications surged. Skilled workers from competitors applied for lateral moves just to join the company. By December the challenge wasn't survival, it was scaling. Walter needed infrastructure, better systems, clearer policies. You've created something people want to be part of, Sharon told him. Now you need to build the structure to support it. I don't know how. Then hire people who do. So he did. A chief people officer, diversity specialists, ethics investigators. A full system to ensure values were actually upheld. For the first time since Catherine's death, Walter felt he was building something truly meaningful. In mid-December, Sharon came with a proposal. What if we formalized the legal aid work, built an actual foundation for workers facing discrimination? That would require significant funds. You have them. The board won't approve. Then fund it personally. He thought of Catherine's journal. I hope he uses his privilege for something meaningful. Okay, he said quietly. Let's start the Catherine Hammond Workers' Rights Foundation. Sharon's eyes filled. That's perfect. They spent a month planning. Walter contributed $25 million as an initial endowment. Sharon would run the foundation, hire staff, build programs, partner with organizations. When Walter offered her the role, she blinked in disbelief. You want me to leave tech venture? Only if you want to. You're thriving there. Yes, she said softly. But this could change lives. So yes, she said again. Absolutely yes. The foundation launched January 2nd, 3 years and 1 week after Walter had nearly died on a park bench. Applications flooded in 57 in the first month. Stories of discrimination, harassment, wage theft. Sharon hired a team, a legal coordinator, 2 case managers, an assistant, and got to work. In March, the foundation's first major case went to trial. A woman fired for reporting harassment. With foundation representation, she won. We did that, Sharon said afterward. You did that, Walter replied. No, we did. Spring brought another milestone. Sarah's full recovery. Emma and Jacob could return to her home. But they didn't want to. Can we stay with Uncle Walter? Emma asked. We like it here, and school's closer. Sarah looked to her brother. Do you want them to stay? 3 months ago he had been drowning. Now he couldn't imagine the house without them. Yes, he said. They can stay through the school year. Weekends with you. We'll reassess in June. Are you sure? I'm offering, Walter said. They're good kids. Emma surprised him with a hug. Thanks, Uncle Walter. By May, the foundation had helped 32 workers. 26 cases won, 4 settled, 2 lost. An educational program on workers' rights launched. The impact was real. Pierce Hammond's profits had fully recovered. Stock price returned to pre-reform levels. Turnover dropped 40%. Clients praised the company's new stability. At the May board meeting, Elizabeth addressed Walter. I want to formally apologize. I doubted your reforms. I thought they'd ruin us. I was wrong. Walter nodded. We've made progress, but there's more work ahead. Our industry needs to change. Standards need to change. We have an opportunity to lead. Then lead, Elizabeth said. You've earned it. That evening, Walter's house was full. Sharon, Maya, Rose, Sarah, Emma, Jacob. Laughter bounced around the dinner table. Walter looked at them, his chosen family, and felt a quiet warmth he hadn't felt in 4 years. Penny, for your thoughts, Sharon asked. I'm glad I'm still here, he said softly. Grateful. Maya talked to a crying old man in a park. Sharon smiled. Me too. Later that night, Walter went to Catherine's office, now an active workspace, not a shrine, and opened her journal again. I hope he uses all that privilege for something meaningful. I'm trying, Catherine, he whispered. I'm really trying. For the first time since her death, he felt like she would be proud. And maybe finally, that was enough. 2 years later, on a cold December evening, Walter stood in the ballroom of the Philadelphia Art Museum. The Catherine Hammond Workers' Rights Foundation was hosting its second annual fundraising gala. 300 people filled the room. Donors, workers they'd helped, community leaders, board members. Sharon took the stage to present the foundation's impact report. She'd grown into her role as executive director, confident and passionate. In 2 years we've helped 147 workers resolve discrimination and retaliation claims, she announced. We've partnered with 15 law firms and 12 labor organizations. We've trained over 3,000 workers on their rights. But more than statistics, we've changed lives. She invited 3 workers to share their stories. A construction worker who'd reported safety violations and been fired. A woman who'd faced sexual harassment. A man who'd been denied promotions because of his disability.
The foundation had helped all three win their cases. This is just the beginning, Sharon concluded. Workers' rights, fair wages, safe conditions, these shouldn't be revolutionary ideas. They should be standard practice. And with your support, we'll keep fighting until they are. The applause was thunderous. Walter watched from the side of the stage, pride swelling in his chest. Sharon had built something extraordinary. After her speech, several workers approached Walter. "You gave me my dignity back," one woman told him, tears in her eyes. "You showed me someone cared," said another. They weren't thanking him for charity, they were thanking him for justice. Later during dinner, Elizabeth Smith approached Walter. "I have news. 3 other major real estate development companies are adopting reforms similar to yours. They're calling it the Hammond model. You've started a movement, Walter." Sharon started a movement. "I just provided resources. Don't be modest. You risked everything to do what was right. Others are following because you showed it could work." As the evening wound down, Walter found Sharon on the museum steps, looking out at the city lights. "Tired?" he asked, joining her. "Exhausted. Good exhausted though. You were magnificent tonight." "It's your foundation, Walter." "No, it's Catherine's foundation, named for her, built on her values, but you're the one making it real. I just write checks." Sharon smiled. "You do more than that. You show up, you care. You fight, that matters." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. 3 years ago today, Walter said quietly, "I was sitting on a park bench planning to kill myself. Your daughter interrupted those plans." "I know. I remember. Sharon, I need you to know, these past 3 years have been the hardest and best of my life. Hard because I've had to actually face my grief, my failures, my demons. Best because I've built something meaningful, because I've found family, because I've remembered how to live. I'm glad Maya talked to you that day, so am I." Maya appeared in the doorway, now 10 years old, and wearing a formal dress she'd been excited about for weeks. "Mama, Mr. Walter, they're serving dessert. We're coming, baby." As they walked back inside, Emma and Jacob waved from across the room. They'd both volunteered to help with the gala, Emma managing coat check, Jacob helping with registration. Rose sat at a table with Sarah, the 2 women who'd become close friends, laughing about something. This was family. Chosen, built, earned through showing up and caring and fighting for each other. The gala raised over $1 million, enough to expand the foundation's work significantly. But more than money, it raised awareness. Media coverage sparked conversations about workers' rights across Philadelphia and beyond. Walter's reforms at Pierce Hammond had inspired other companies. The foundation's legal victories had set precedents. Change was spreading, slowly but surely. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks and failures. Some workers they couldn't help. Some cases they lost. Some companies refused to reform. But progress was being made, and Walter had learned something crucial. You didn't have to save everyone to make a difference. You just had to keep trying, keep showing up, keep choosing to do what was right, even when it was hard. That night, after the gala, after everyone had gone home, Walter sat in his living room with a cup of tea, looking at photos from the evening. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Tonight was so cool. When I grow up I want to help people like you and Mama do." Walter smiled. The next generation was watching, learning that privilege could be used for good. That power could be wielded ethically. That business success and human dignity didn't have to be opposing forces. He texted back, "You already help people just by being you, but I'm excited to see what you'll do when you're all grown up." Another text appeared, this one from Sharon. "Thank you for tonight, for everything, for still being here. Thank you for making sure I stayed," he replied. Walter set down his phone and picked up the photo of Catherine from his desk, the one from their anniversary. Her eyes were bright with joy, her smile genuine. "We did it," he told her photo. "We built something meaningful. I hope you're proud." Of course there was no answer. Catherine was gone, and nothing would change that. The grief was still there, would always be there. But so was purpose, so was family, so was hope. Walter was 74 years old. He'd lost the love of his life. He'd almost lost himself. But he'd been pulled back from the edge by a 7-year-old girl who offered to share her mother, by a woman who chose compassion over caution, by people who showed him that life could still have meaning even after devastating loss. And now he spent his days using his privilege to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. He went to therapy weekly, he took his medication, he attended Emma's school events, and helped Jacob with his writing. He had Sunday dinners with Sharon, Maya, and Rose. He ran a company committed to treating workers with dignity. He funded a foundation changing lives. He wasn't perfect, he still had hard days, but he was really living, not just existing. And some days that felt like victory enough. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the city in white, just like it had 3 years ago. But Walter wasn't standing in a cold park with pills in his pocket anymore. He was sitting in a warm house, surrounded by evidence of lives touched and changed, feeling grateful. Grateful for second chances, grateful for family, grateful for the little girl who'd looked at a crying stranger and decided to help. Grateful to still be here. And that gratitude, that simple fact of continuing existence, was the greatest gift of all.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.